Good afternoon, everybody. We are live here in the dugout on the Lenny Melnick Fantasy Sports Network to talk a little fantasy baseball on Sunday. Happy Sunday afternoon, everybody. This is the only show that's clinically proven to be 73% effective. It's only been 3 days since our last no-hitter. Congrats to Colin McHugh, Josh Fleming, Diego Castillo, Matt Whistler, Pete Fairbanks on the 9th no-hitter of the year. Because if you throw an entire game of baseball with no hits in it, that's a no-hitter. It's not rocket science. Max Scherzer gave a grand slam to a just called up from the minors relief pitcher this week. The Cubs record is 44-46 and in fourth place, 8 games back of the guaranteed to fade Milwaukee Brewers. You don't make the playoffs with a pitching staff that can't go deep, and on the backs of Avisail Garcia, Luis Urias, and William Adames. Congrats to the Tampa Bay Lightning. Got to notice that because you're down here in Florida on winning their second consecutive Stanley Cup, and you are in the dugout with me, Doug Boyle. How you doing, everybody? There are some things that I'm on a few minutes early. I'm getting the thing set up so I can get into the chat room, and it's not actually working very well. So whatever it is, I don't know. Anyway, I'm broadcasting live on Facebook. If you catch me there, seems the feed is only on Facebook. Anyway, I'll be talking anyway. It doesn't matter. There's a couple people in the chat room. It's always good to see the thing. With it being on Facebook, I got to watch this thing right here. I do want to talk about a couple things that are a bit outside first. The Tampa Bay Lightning did win the Stanley Cup, which is kind of cool. But I live in Florida, and one thing that kind of hit me hard this week was the highlight was bought out by a church, and it's like I like to highlight people. I'm not a big fan of church people, especially big mega church. Let's make a lot of money off of God kind of folks. There are some good church people, but they're generally not in churches of 15,000 people. And there might be one or two out of 15,000. So if you're in one of those churches and you think you're a good person, you can think I'm saying you're a good person. But anyway, what's more Florida than Greyhound racing and Highlight? And now we don't have either because the Greyhound racing got closed at the end of last year in the middle of a pandemic because people who don't live in places with Greyhound racing voted to say that other places in the state can't have it. So just kind of sad. Talk about the time slot. We didn't come on last week because of the holiday, and I was a little bit busy, and I apologize for that. Surprised I only got two people that emailed me, so I guess I got the word out okay. Lenny and Andrea are going to be on Sunday mornings, so I wanted to give them the space that they deserve to talk as long as they want. Their plan is to be on at 9 in the morning, but this is the first week. And if there were technical difficulties or they want to start at 10, I want to give them that space. Now, I don't know where we're going to wind up time-wise, but I guarantee you it'll be before 4 p.m. on Sunday. I think 1 o'clock works a little bit better for me because it just gives me a little bit of breather. Anyway, everyone saw last night, Ronald Acuna landed kind of funny tracking down a fly ball on the warning track and was immediately removed from the game on a stretcher. The Braves announced around 11 p.m. tonight that a complete tear of his right ACL happened and he's done for the year. I have Ronald Acuna in a couple leagues. One of them being a best ball, meaning he's just done and I can't do anything to replace him. And the other league didn't replace him. He said there. Luckily, both these leagues, I'm in first place with a decent lead and I can probably hold on, but that'll be the thing that goes on there. I haven't mentioned the insane stuff that went on with our friend Trevor Bauer, but I did want to point out three things. One is, I think it's the most serious of any of the accusations we've heard against a baseball player, period, because there's a fine line between sexual assault and rape, and there's a fine line between domestic and rape, and everyone kind of thinks that rape is being harder with that. And the girl was conscious for a little while, and that's been on both sides. The other thing that hurts this, and the reason why you can't really expect anything from Bauer is that this was filed ex parte, which means that the woman involved was not involved in filing this. It was filed on her behalf, which means that, unlike in things in the past where, like Marcelo Zuna's thing is still going on, the ex-wife might sit there and go, hey, the amount of money I'm going to get in my divorce is really hinged on whether this guy plays baseball or not, and I don't want to ruin that career because it ruins me too. Might try to walk things back like they did with Aroldis Chapman. In the Aroldis Chapman case, it was really serious, but once the next day came around, the girlfriend realized, like, this is my money ticket and I don't want to ruin it. And so all the people involved were non-cooperative, which is why he was never arrested. So Bauer's probably done. Move on from that. Anyway, to the All-Star festivities start tomorrow. A lot of interesting things. The Major League Draft tonight at 7. It's really not my thing to talk about drafted players, especially not college and minor leaguers. So I won't be doing that. And I have been here for a week. Usually I do an injury report, and I'm going to do the injury report. I'm going to go back to the 1st of July. The point being is that when I read off the guys that return from injury, I want to be able to, if you have a player that you may not have known, you can go, oh, I got to get in my lineup. Admittedly, the older ones aren't going to be. You already know it. So we've seen Cole Calhoun return. We've seen Ryan Tipper return for the Cubs. Starting pitcher Logan Webb of the Giants. Starting pitcher Taylor Widener of the Diamondbacks. Zach Plesac of the Cleveland Indians. Mike Pineda of the Twins. Nico Goodrum of the Detroit Tigers. Josh Fleming of the Tampa Bay Rays. Washington's Eric Fetty. San Francisco's Tyler Beede, and that's his return from Tommy John surgery and a 60-day thing. I know he's just going to be in the bullpen, but congratulations on getting back to baseball. And Boston second baseman Christian Arroyo. In the previous week, we saw Nico Horner return, Rafael Dolis return, Steve Biscotti, Jonathan Villar, Danny Jansen, Roberto Perez, Adam Eaton, who was sent down. Didi Gregorius, Randall Reyes, that's a big one. Brandon Nemo, Mark Stroman, Harrison Bader, and David Dahl and J.B. Buskauskas. This week's IL, which is going to be topped off with, the announcement about Ronald Acuna getting sent sometime today. We saw Odubel Herrera get carted off with left ankle tendonitis. Washington's Yan Gomez with oblique strain. New York lost Jonathan Loaizaga. I assume that's COVID because there's nothing marked next to it. Miguel Andujar has a left wrist strain. He's on the IL. Asdrubal Cabrera, the right hamstring strain in Arizona. Mike Brousseau, right oblique strain in Tampa. Danny Santana, left quad strain in Boston. Houston's Carlos Correa is out. San Diego's relief pitcher Drew Pomerantz has a left forearm inflammation. Blake Snell, after returning last week from the IL, is now back on the IL with gastroenteritis. That's the first one of those this year. Buster Posey, left thumb contusion. Chad Pinder, right hamstring strain. Sonny Gray, the ribcage strain. Joe Ross with the right elbow inflammation. Manny Margot, outfielder he's with the Tampa Bay now. The left hamstring strain. Eddie Rosario with a right abdominal strain in Cleveland. Daz Cameron's backup center fielder. Daz Cameron, but what's a great name. He has a right thumb strain. Jake Arrieta of the Cubs, a right hamstring tightness. Michael Franco with a right ankle sprain. Clayton Kershaw of the Dodgers with a left elbow inflammation. I think it's one of those things where it won't be that long because sometimes you see people get put to the IL when there's those days off in the All-Star through it. It's more of a rest thing. I don't expect him to be out that long. Outfielder Phillip Evans of the Pittsburgh Pirates out on the 7th day with a concussion. Polanco's out with a bilateral adductor strain. Anthony Rendon back on the IL with left hamstring strain. Yasmani Grandal with torn left knee tendon. Those are the ones from this week. From last week, I guess the big two were Kyle Schwarber and Zach Gallen. We'll go through that. There were a couple trades in this last thing. Nothing huge. New York Yankees acquired Tim LaCastro from Arizona for right-handed pitcher Keegan Curtis. Tim LaCastro is the master of hit-by-pitch and a very good stolen base guy. Hasn't shown much on the Yankees yet. The Yankees aren't really running this year. New York Mets acquired starting pitcher Anthony Banda from San Francisco for third baseman Will Toffey. Anthony Banda was a former top 100 prospect with the Diamondbacks and also with the Tampa Bay Rays. New York Mets use a pitcher. You might see his name come up later in this year. Pittsburgh acquired first baseman John Nagowski from St. Louis. Washington acquired Alcides Escobar from Kansas City for cash. Both those guys are actually playing. And Milwaukee acquired first baseman Rowdy Tellez from Toronto for a couple of pitchers, Trevor Richards, Bowden Francis. That's the underlying news of the week before we get into position by position. Before we do, I want to tell you I'm gonna change the focus a little bit going forward based on how my teams have done this year. And I need to focus a little more on pitching. So I'm gonna do pitching up front and the position players last, ending with catcher, and then we'll end with at that point. One thing I do want to do with pitching, and something I at the start of the year was we were talking about 2-star pitchers. The point in that wasn't really 2-star pitchers. It's more of a points league thing. The point was to get good matchups out of your pitchers and to exploit the really bad matchups. So we're going to do a little bit this week, but realistically, there's only 3 pitching days. But these are the teams that we're going to go looking for pitchers that are cheap that are against. The top tier, the best guys to go against are Arizona, especially away, but at home too. Seattle, especially at home, but away is fine. Texas, wherever they're at. Miami, wherever they're at. Pittsburgh, wherever they're at. The second tier, the really good ones are Detroit, either versus left-handers or at home, not versus righties on the road. Kansas City, not at home games versus righties. So you want lefties on the road. And lefties anywhere and road games anywhere. Cleveland is in this category. New York Mets are in this category. Especially at home, they're much worse offensively at home. And you have Colorado in their away games and Baltimore in their away games. The next tier down is Atlanta versus lefties or away. I move these out of the bottom tier because without Acuna, that is a pretty weak offense. And it's got Freeman and nothing else that really scares you. And you can pitch around Freeman now. The Los Angeles Angels when they're away. Milwaukee versus lefties. St. Louis pretty much wherever they're at, but a little bit more when they're facing a lefty. And the bottom category, these are just really specific things. A good matchup is versus Tampa Bay when they're in Tampa Bay, versus Cincinnati anywhere when they're facing a lefty, and versus the Cubs when it's a away game. So the news on the pitching side, Cleveland recalled starting pitcher Tristan McKenzie. He had a really nice outing. Cincinnati recalled Tony Santillan to take the place of Sonny Gray on his injury. Tampa Bay recalled, as was predicted on the roundtable show on Monday night. It was there. Matt Shoemaker was DFA'd by Minnesota. He has been awful this year. Texas recalled Dennis Santana. It's a name to watch. That guy was one of those many hype prospects in the Los Angeles system, and he'll have an opportunity in Texas. I was shocked that the Angels optioned Griffin Canny, but I think he'll be back. San Francisco has sent Aaron Sanchez to rehab in Sacramento. Arizona has sent Madison Bumgarner to rehab with the ACL Diamondbacks. The deeper they send them down the line usually means the longer the rehab. The rules on rehab are something like no more than 30 games and no more 10 at a level on one stint, because you don't want let's say a really good player to go down to Double-A, play for 30 days and while that team racks up a 21-6 record, and it throws off what they're actually doing. So the deeper they throw them down, that means the more stops they're going to stay on the way. John Means, thanks Andrea for that fix. Yeah, I don't know how the time got changed from 2 to 1:30. I don't think I did it. I may have. And because of that, I was late. It wouldn't let me go to Facebook. So thank you very much. I am now up on the site. Hello to the chat room. The nuts and bolts of this entire network is the name is Lenny Melnick, but the behind the scenes is Andrea getting stuff done. So we'll do the moment to thank you. And John Means is rehabbing in Bowie, which is Double-A. And Pittsburgh signed Shelby Miller to a minor league contract. I don't know if that'll come up anywhere. As I told you, I was going to focus on pitching from here on out. This is really a stupid week to start it, but hey, we've been stupid before. there's really only 3 games of pitching before the next waiver run thing. So a lot of things are a little bit off. Like, we talked about Tristan McKenzie already had that one good outing of 9 innings pitched, but he's not going to pitch at all next week. He'll pitch the following week. And so, one of 2 things is going to happen. Either people are going to not draft him because he isn't pitching, or they're going to draft him this week not realizing he's not pitching, which is kind of cool. So almost let him sit out there for other people because that's a 0 from that spot. Anyway, in the deeper leagues, in the shallow leagues like Yahoo, there are a number of pitchers there that I think are pretty good. By a number, I mean 4. Logan Gilbert is still only on the 40% of games. He's got a 3.51 ERA, 97 WHIP, with 53 strikeouts in 48 innings. For the rest of the season, would you rather have Kimbrel or Jansen? Yeah, I'm going to do that before. Let me answer that question right now before I do the rest of these guys. That's a really good question. I think Kimbrel has been the better player, but with the trade possibility coming up, that throws a wild card into that. I can't imagine the Cubs keeping Kimbrel, and they may not get a great deal for him, but they'll trade him anyway. It's like for whatever they get, which means that he could go to a lot of different teams, even teams that already have a closer, and that's the one worry. If that wasn't there, it would be hands down Kimbrel. I still think I'm going to take Kimbrel because Kenley Jansen, every time I see him pitch, and to the eye, he looks like he's losing it a little bit. And you can actually see it in the numbers. All his pitches are down, not anything drastically, like 0.75 miles per hour. But then you look at his stats as far as what he actually accomplishes, and everything is fine. And yeah, and that's tough. They're going to, the Dodgers should have more opportunities. It's very close. I'd rather have Kimbrel. I think I would. But it's not by an awful lot. And it's also because, and it probably is almost entirely because we all saw the Dodgers lose faith in Kenley Jansen in the playoffs last year, in the World Series last year, which means that it's possible that he could do something to have them break their faith. And they have some other guys there. But when we get to relief pitchers, there's a handful of guys that are elite. Actually, I'll go to that right now. It's like I put down the guys that are safe, and I try to put them in basically the order that I like them. And so, like, the guys that are safe, like I have number 1 Hendricks, number 2 Hader, number 3 Melanson, number 4 Kimbrel, number 5 Alex Reyes, number 6 Houston, Ryan Presley, number 7 Iglesias, and number 8 Kenley Jansen, and that's the really good grouping, and he's 8th. And but that is the really good group. There are other guys that are safe, but Kimbrel has looked at times like the best closer in baseball. And I know I'm a Cub fan, and I might be a little bit biased, but it's like it's hard to sit there and go, yeah, I cannot put him ahead of Liam Hendricks. Yeah, I cannot put him ahead of Mark Lanson, even though I have doubts about whether he'll be great the whole year long. And I can't put him ahead of Hader. Like 4th is as high as I can go. But in that category of Kenley Jansen, Rogelio Iglesias, Ryan Presley, Alex Reyes, Craig Kimbrel, there's not a huge difference between the two. But I'll be back. But I'll go back. So we talked about Logan Gilbert. He's had a 3.51 ERA since that June 1 outing, which was pretty bad. And so he's a guy that should be owned in more than 49%. I know that's splitting hairs on thing. Zach Thompson of the Marlins. It's amazing how Miami finds these guys out of nowhere, and they're pretty good. Because he's a Marlin and he's really a nobody, I don't think he'll be great for the entire season. But he's got 2 quality starts back to back, a 2.25 ERA, 31 strikeouts in 24 innings. There's a lot of things to like there. Ride it for as long as you can. Kwang Young Kim of the St. Louis Cardinals has finally got 2 straight wins. Actually, 2 straight 0-run games. He actually pitched really well last year down the stretch once they let him pitch. He's been a little bit of disappointment this year, and I think primarily because of his back issues. They were like coddling him, and they were only pitching with 3-4 innings. And you kind of need if you have a pitcher like Kim, who is a less than a strikeout per inning guy, he's the kind of guy that in 90 innings pitched will have 68 strikeouts. You need him to pitch the innings, and when they're pulling the innings away and they're pulling the wins away because of that, it drops his relative value. It seems like recently, either by Kim getting healthy enough or by necessity in St. Louis, they're letting Kim pitch the way he pitched last year, and he's worth picking up. His ERA has dropped down to 3.38. Yeah, he's got 52 strikeouts in 62 innings. And then the other guy that I've been talking about all year long, is David Price, and there's no reason why he should be stopped from there. Of course, his last outing he only pitched 3 innings, and he'll probably go like 3, 4, 4, 5. You might not see the good David Price for another 3 weeks, but it's worth having him on the thing right now because that's the Dodgers are their pitching staff has been cut in a quarter, and there's no way they can keep a guy who has this much quality. David Price, if he wasn't on the Dodgers, would be the number 3 pitcher on all but maybe 4 teams. That's how good he is. There's a couple other names in there, which Terry Skubal is only 46%. Then Tristan McKenzie we talked about. There's kind of this little cache of young guys who aren't pitching enough. And Casey Mize falls in this category too, but he's over 50. I've actually cut him in some leagues because he's not pitching 5 innings, and without 5 innings, you're not going to get the wins, and you're not going to get, even if you're a good strikeout guy, in 4 innings, what do you hope for in strikeout 6 from somebody who's great? But Tristan McKenzie may not pitch long. Shane McClanahan looks really good when he pitches, but after getting 2 6-inning starts, the last 2 have been back down into that 4 range. And Cal Muller, who has 16 innings, has 20 strikeouts for the Braves, is also limited on innings. They're guys that you can take up if you're just looking for a quick strikeout pump, or especially in leagues where you have daily moves where you can actually pick one of these guys up, then another one, and another one. I don't play in. I play in one of those leagues, and that league has a 5 transaction a week maximum, so we don't do a lot of that. But those leagues are out there. I don't like playing them, but they are. You should have awareness of those guys. So yeah, my recommendations on the Yahoo side are Logan Gilbert, Kwang Young Kim, and David Price. Not necessarily in that order. Actually, reverse that order. In the deeper leagues, Tristan McKenzie is available in 51% of leagues in NFBC. He'll probably be a hot commodity this week. I know that Alberjan is going to be the big commodity. I think I might throw like a $8 bid on him just to keep the guys honest. But like I said, he's not pitching this week, and I'm not 100% certain how committed they are. And he did have a 5 ERA going into this game. The thing about young guys that aren't playing well, the Keston Hiras and the Garrett Kurloffs, and even the Tristan McKenzies, is that they can get better. Terry Skubal got better. Casey Mize got better. Whereas a guy like Brad Keller with a 5 ERA kind of scares you a little bit, even though I'm going to recommend him in a little bit. David Price is 46-0. He's the key guy there. Tyler McGill is owned in 42% of leagues. The big, tall strikeout guy he actually almost could fit in that other category of maybe not going in deep enough. And Tony Santillan is going to be pulled up to cover for Sonny Gray. And if that's true, he actually will pitch next week, which puts him in that very, very short group of guys so Price, McGill, and Santillan have it. If you look at those teams that we talked about that we should target, there's not a lot of choices here, but these are the 3 guys that I think have the best matchups that are owned in. One guy's owned in 42% of leagues in the FBC. One is in 0. One's in 12. So, but if you can ride these things out, because I think there's a lot more to these pitchers. A lot of pitchers who are average get some good outings versus these bad teams, and it makes their numbers look better than they are, including these guys. So Brad Keller is owned in 43% of leagues, and he has a home game versus Baltimore. Now, I don't expect a ton of strikeouts there, but this is the kind of thing where for at the very end, if you're sucking through at the bottom of the thing with a $1 pickup, I would expect that he's going to push 6 innings and strike out 1 less than the innings he pitched. So maybe 5.2 with 4 Ks. Maybe 2 runs allowed, 3 runs allowed, and he wins the game. That's the thing there. I want to do this. Chad Kuhl is another one. He's got a game at home for the Pirates versus the New York Mets. The Mets are a pretty weak hitting team. And then the other one is Vince Velasquez is going to pitch. He's 12% rostered versus Miami. And those are the 3 guys that are. Now, the nice thing about doing it this week with just 3, I'm going to see how this plays out, because none of these guys are guys that you want on your team regularly, but you might want them for a week. And I noticed that some, if you look at the teams that are actually at the very top in the leagues, like NFB in the TGFBI, their teams don't look that good on paper, but they're performing because they're moving through players at these things. And I've had incredible luck because of bad drafting at catcher position, cycling my catchers versus lesser opponents, or when they have more games and that sort of stuff. And my catching as a whole has 17 home runs already and is batting about 255, which is better than all but about 5 catchers. And it's been a bunch of Luis Torrences and whatever. But the same thing can be done at the pitching side. So this is where we're going to go with those guys. So the recommendations there are David Price, Tyler McGill, and then Brad Keller just for this week. And then we get to the relief pitcher stuff. So with the relief pitching, this was the question I had before about who would get what. I'm gonna run through the closer report right after I get this. The guys that have safe jobs right now, and this is the order that I rank them in, and it's probably pretty accurate. If you want to say that 2 guys that read next to each other should be reversed, I'm not going to argue with you much. I got Liam Hendricks 1, Josh Hader 2. Do you want to go Haders 1, Liam Hendricks 2? I'm not standing in the way of that. So it goes like we went through the first 8: Hendricks, Hader, Melanson, Kimbrel, Reyes, Presley, Iglesias, Kenley Jansen. Then you have Brad Hand, Matt Barnes, Edwin Diaz, Will Smith, Jordan Romano, Richard Rodriguez, Ian Kennedy, and newly minted in this is Joakim Sawyer, who had 2 saves this week and a win, but it's more by attrition. He was bad before this, but he's going to be the guy until he showed otherwise. Admittedly, those aren't the best situations in the world. So if you go through these lineups here, New York Yankees would normally be in the safe spot, but Aroldis Chapman's been so bad lately. He's got his ERA balloon up to 4.55. Chad Green got the save on Wednesday, and Chad Green, because of that, is going to be a recommendation as a relief pitcher speculation. One of 2 things are going to happen. One is they're going to remove Aroldis Chapman from the closer role for a little bit. That's for Chad Green. That's the lesser of 2 things going to happen. So that's the better of 2 things. The thing that will likely happen is they'll put Aroldis Chapman on the IL for some reason to save face. One of those things. And the nice thing about doing that, you can say he has. Hell, they could say he has COVID. They could say he has. They could actually send him down to the minors for a couple games to build some confidence and work through some whatever, if there might be a grip issue or a delivery issue or a tipping pitches issue, whatever that might be. Tampa Bay, they advertised to be a committee. We'll go through the committees first, but realistically speaking, Diego Castillo is their closer. If you look at the thing as a whole, he's got 13 saves this year. The next guy's at 3, and he got this week's only save. Everybody on that team that you want that's a relief pitcher is, unless you're in a holds league, you can pretty much drop for somebody else. The only one I would question even for a second is JP Fireisen. The other committees are Cleveland has the class committee with Karinchak and Class A, and they've been working, firing all cylinders all year until this week, where they had no conversion of 3 blown saves. Two of the blown saves were Class A's. Only one was thing. I think it'll work itself out and work itself back to what we actually had. But if Class A is blowing a lot of saves and Karinchak isn't, if you could be on the right side of that, you could have a closer who automatically jumps into the top 5 ahead of into that category with Kenley Jansen and Craig Kimbrel. So that's worth watching, especially if you have a portion of that. In Cincinnati, Heath Hembry has converted 3 of 4 save opportunities and 4 total for the Cincinnati Reds. So it looks like the Reds, after watching San Diego, have great luck with a mediocre ex-Boston Red Sox relief pitcher as a closer. It's not to go the same way with Heath Hembry. there's something weird going on there, because if you look at his numbers, I know that there's not a lot of things. There's not a ton of pitches. You're talking about a closer who pitches 1 inning. So what are you looking at? Like 12 to 15 pitches a game. But his K rate's up to over 10% to 42%, and his velo's up to 95, which is actually normal. When he was pitching his best as a reliever, as a setup guy, he was throwing around 95 on average. I don't think Cincinnati is anything you can trust for long-term stuff. And, when TJ Antone and Lucas Sims get healthy, they might be back in the mix. But Hembree has been good enough in this interim, converting 4 saves and looking this good numerically, looking better than any version of Heath Hembree we've ever seen, that he could run away with it and hold on it for a lot longer than we think and emerge. If you were to ask me who's the one player that could emerge as the Cincinnati closer, Heath Hembree has got to be the odds-on favorite for that, with very small numbers to the other guys. In Seattle, Kendall Graveman is the normal closer, but their management likes to use him in non-safe situations, higher leverage or whatever. And they were very comfortable throwing out a very bad, let's say, Rafael Montero for years. I thought it was going to be Drew Steckenrider. Now it looks like Paul Sewald's actually pitching better than them, but one of those two guys are going to be decent for saves. And if Graveman were to be traded, Sewald's the guy I'd want. And I actually want Sewald a little bit more than Steckenrider in the first place. San Francisco has an odd. They have an odd committee going on, but it seems to be working for them. Jake McGee and Taylor Rogers share the spot. Strangely, they give McGee a little more than they give Rogers, and that's odd because McGee is the lefty, but he's got more traditionally difficult stuff to hit than Taylor Rogers, who's a submarine pitcher, relies on deception. And if you see that too much, it gets easier to hit. So, yeah, but either one of those guys is worth rostering, and there's nobody else there. In Oakland, the committee there favors Lou Trevino, but Diekman did get the 1 save this week. Either of those two guys are rosterable. In Minnesota, their thing, they have 1 save for Rogers, 2 for Hansel Robles. And I would take Hansel Robles over Rogers simply because he's the right-hander. He'll probably get 6 out of every 10 opportunities. In Detroit had Gregory Soto convert its own lone save this week, and but Joe Cisneros in the mix had the save before that, which was last week. They're only getting about 1 a week anyway. They're one of the very last teams in baseball where I would actually field that guy and feel decent about it. I think that Cisneros is a decent closer. I think that Gregory Soto is a decent closer. I think that an injured Michael Fulmer could be a very good closer. But whereas most of these other teams that are screwed up, which are the ones that are coming after this, are much more dangerous. And but Soto Cisneros, yeah, if you're desperate. In 15 teams, sure. Philadelphia is another committee, though Jose Alvarez sort of emerged the best pitcher in this spot. They do have Archie Bradley and Ranger Suarez to get the shots. I really wouldn't bother with Bradley and only give Ranger Suarez a minor thought. Hector Nearest and Connor Brogdon have played themselves out of the mix, but they had no saves this week. Yeah, I really wouldn't go for that. I think that some things might change in baseball, and Philadelphia's a team that could turn things around in the second half. So it's a watch situation, but right now I really only want Alvarado. Baltimore had no save chance this week. Cesar Valdez returns from injury, letting up 5 runs in 2 outings, 2 in one and 3 in the other. He's nothing to worry about. Baltimore has moved into the situation where they're a closer situation I don't want any part of. Historically, before their current management, Baltimore was the kind of team that could be really, really bad and still give you a 40 save closer. They're not that sort of thing anymore. If you have to pick one out of the bunch, I'm still going to stick with Cole Sulzer, but it's a gnarly bunch. In Colorado, Daniel Bard is the only player in that Colorado bullpen worth rostering because he's the guy that's going to get the saves. It does require, some Pepto-Bismol to get through. He is a little bit better on the road than he is at home, and that's kind of, if you watch what's going on with him, is that a lot of runs are scored in Colorado, less runs are scored outside of Colorado. So what he does is he comes home like he's going to do this week after the All-Star break, and he looks really, really horrible. And you're like, what am I doing holding this guy? Then he goes on the road for a little bit, and he gets a couple decent saves and has 3 outings where he lets up maybe 2 hits. And you're like, oh, he's not bad. Then he goes back home, and it looks horrible again. If you can afford to, bench him at home. In Kansas City, Scott Barlow had been the most consistent Royal until this week. He blew 2 saves chances. If I had to take one guy to there, I'm going to stick with Greg Holland ahead of Barlow, but he's not a very good pitcher, and there are a lot of guys that have to. If you're desperate for saves, and he was said, I want to pick one Kansas City guy, that's the guy I'd want. Those guys are so big. Like, for instance, Baltimore, you can go through this. Like, with Detroit, if somebody might go and say, I want Gregory Soto in a trade, somebody might go and say, I want Jose Cisnero in a trade. No one is going to be trading for anybody from Baltimore, Colorado, or Kansas City. I mean, Kansas City, those guys maybe for middle relief setup, but no one's trading for a closer from these groupings. They're just a mess up. In other news, Boston, where Adam Barnes is safe, Adam Ottavino gets a decent amount of saves because Boston is streaky. They win in bunches, and they wind up having to give him time. And sometimes Barnes is overpitched. He's a must-roster player in leagues that do solds or holds, because if you're looking at a guy that probably on the year will have 25 holds and 11 saves, that's pretty good. And a guy with 11 saves, he might actually outsave most of these weird guys that people are rostering, like J.P. Fireeisen or Scott Barlow on these committees that are just total messes. Connor Brogdon's. So he's worth mentioning, and he's worth recommending, understanding where you're at with that recommendation. Let me do this real quick. I'm not done. I need to get to this. There we go. Okay. Nothing on that spot. Toronto, Jordan Romano is the safe guy there. And but there's enough there to make you question it just a teensy bit. Tim Mesa got a save last week. It was situational. And Rafael Dolis has come back, even though his first game out was pretty terrible. He's been every outing since then, which I think is 3. He's pitched a clean inning with 2 strikeouts in each one of those. So he might work his way back into that. But Romano's the guy. Just be aware that there's somebody coming. That Dolis is breathing down his neck. In Texas, Ian Kennedy is effective. He has no competition, and he's likely to be traded. When he was on the injured reserve, the bullpen guys in Texas were lining up to be the guy to blow the save in his place. And I think that they had like 7 opportunities, and none of them converted. I don't know how many opportunities they actually had, but I know it was 0 conversions. And Josh Spores did convert a save when Kennedy was back, because the day after Kennedy pitched the first day, they had a save opportunity, and they didn't want to pitch Kennedy back to back. But who do you want there? The only guy, I don't really want anybody there, but I always say that you want either the guy that has the best stuff or the guy that the management likes. And the guy with the best stuff looks to be Spencer Patton with his 32% K rate and 4 holds. He'd be the guy I'd want if Kennedy moves. In Miami, Yimi Garcia is closer in name, and he's so much closer in name that I almost put him in the safe spot, but he hasn't been good of late, and I've never really believed that he has a closer mindset, closer repertoire. He gives up too many home runs to be a closer. Anthony Bender got the save this week, and he throws harder and strikes out more. I don't think it takes a trade of Yimi Garcia for him to take over the closer role. And Yimi Garcia doesn't have to be traded to a team that needs a closer. He's actually far more effective in the 7th inning when he can throw without thinking that if he lets up a home run, the game is over. In Chicago, Kimbrel is the man, no doubt about it, but they just got Tepera back from IL, who would be the man if the man exited Chicago. If people are thinking about the trade deadline comes up at the end of this month. Who's the guy you're looking at? And that'd be Ryan Tepera. Pittsburgh, if they trade Rodriguez, David Bednar's the guy there. A couple other deeper relief pitching things are out there. Is Cambrid Pedrosa signed a minor league contract in Philadelphia. They're still searching. And Philadelphia DFA'd Neftali Feliz, who is a name that used to be good, but who knows what they are nowadays. So that brings you to what our connections are. And so even in the in Yahoo leagues, Heath Hembry's available in 82% of the leagues. Joaquin Sorio in 79. Adam Avino has a 3 saves and 5 holds on the year. He's available. Chad Green is the fill-in guy. Those things. The same goes true for the deeper leagues. But I would throw in there along with Heath Hembry, Joaquin Soria, Chad Green. I would throw in there taking a risk on Seawald, who's 49%, or direct second writer, and maybe Archie Bradley. I also would say that Adam Ottavino is a 15-team league pickup because the number of saves are going to be better than a lot of guys. If you're in a 15-team league, there's only 30 teams, so theoretically, no team has more than 2 closers. It behooves a team to have more than 2 closers. If Ottavino's your 3rd closer, that's actually pretty decent. So those are recommendations. Chad Green, Soria, Hembry, Ottavino. In the outfield, which we go to next, and where are we at time-wise? I don't see the time counter. Oh, there it is, 41. Yeah, about right. Cleveland recalled Daniel Johnson. St. Louis recalled Lars Nootbaar. Well, we always bring up Nootbaar because it's a great name to say. Tampa Bay called up, sent down, and recalled Vidal Bruchon. I have him in the outfield spot because I think that's where he's going to wind up playing. I also have him in the shortstop spot because, for our purposes, he'll be both of those. Atlanta recalled shortstop Orlando Arcia, who played his 5th game in the outfield last night, so he's now eligible in many, many leagues in the outfield. Washington recalled Yadiel Hernandez, a guy that I liked for a while. Pittsburgh recalled Jared Oliva, who somebody was watching because he's a speed guy. Chicago DFA'd Adam Eaton. LA Dodgers DFA'd Steven Souza. We all saw that coming. The LA Angels DFA'd Scott the Answer Schebler, which means that Joe Adell, I think Joe Adell is going to come before the month's out. New York Mets optioned Alberto Amora Jr. Kansas City Royals keep optioning and picking up and keep optioning Edward Olivares. If he got a chance to play, he would be a good player. Eloy Jimenez started his rehab assignment with the Winston-Salem Dash last night. Would have started the day before, but they were rained out. And Detroit has Victor Reyes and Toledo rehabbing. A couple interesting things out there for some lesser players, but they're deep league relevant. Like Phil Gosselin of the Angels. He's the guy that's taken Schebler's place. He started the last 9 games, batting 4th or 5th in right field, actually. In Cleveland, they have Oscar Mercado or Daniel Johnson that are kind of going back and forth, battling for the one outfield position that's with the vacated Eddie Rosario. I don't know who's going to win, but Daniel Johnson has been touted as a top prospect, and Oscar Mercado did have a pretty good year 2 years ago. I think one of them could emerge. If I had to pick, I'd pick Daniel Johnson, but it's really just personal preference. In Chicago, outfielder Ian Happ has hit by not hitting his way out of the lineup, and it seems like they're rotating Marisnik, Ortega, and Happ in center field. That's not good for Happ's things. Arizona's Calhoun returned, and I like Calhoun. It would but it basically fills a void that's left by Asdrubal Cabrera leaving at third base as Josh Rojas moves from the outfield to the infield, and Calhoun takes the outfield spot. LA Dodgers, AJ Pollock has established himself as the principal starter in the outfield for them, but he is bat 8th. Adam Duvall, as hot as he's been of lately, has only played in 4 of the last 8 games. There's something going on there that I don't see and don't understand. And I am a person that has Duvall in a lot of things. It's not just sitting versus lefties, it's not whatever. It's just he's a guy that they don't believe in enough to start all the time. New York, Brandon Nimmo returned and slotted right back in the leadoff spot. Oh, he's sick? But it still doesn't explain, like, the game before. Like, there was 2 games in a row that he was sick, but he missed last night, and then he missed, like, a game, like in the last 8 games, it's like the 8th game is day off. Like, the 9th game it's just weird. Because he played 2 of those games. That's the thing. Brandon Nimmo returned to leadoff spot. Yeah, but it was only one lefty that he got sat for, so I can see that. It was just it didn't make a lot of sense. But when looking at the lineup, it's worth noting. I don't know what to make of it. I'm just saying it's worth noting. I expect a lot more out of Adam Duvall than him playing. I don't mind him because you got him for power, and he's not that good of a batting average guy. He'll hit 30 home runs playing 5 days a week instead of 7. And I don't think he'll hit that many more home runs if he played every day of the week. But the more days of the week, it means more days with the bad average. I actually kind of like him to get it. I prefer him, if he can hit lefties, to not bat versus lefties. There we go. So, yeah, but I am the Duvall guy. Brandon returned. Philadelphia has been starting Travis Jankowski in center field. With Odubel Herrera injured, he's done nothing of interest. He has been a guy who can steal bases, but he's not even doing that. I think that Luke Williams might get a shot to take over that spot. Tyler Naquin has started against 2 of the last 3 lefties. That's the story on him. Is not that he doesn't hit lefties well, but they're playing him there anyway in Cincinnati. Andrew Benintendi is back and batting second, doing reasonably well. Detroit is finally comfortable starting Akil Baddoo and batting him leadoff because of his good on base skills. His last couple of weeks have been a little bit off, but he still gets on enough that it works out in the spot, and he gets on more. And his batting average is still, as off as it's been, has been better than Robbie Grossman's. And Brian Goodwin of the White Sox has been batting cleanup. So those are the stories of the outfield. So Duvall, Harold, and Jesus Sanchez share 2 corner spots. Harold Ramirez is on like the Tigers or something now, or who is the other guy in the outfield? It's Cooper plays some outfield. That's what you got to worry about. But yeah, Duvall, Sanchez, and Cooper. Yeah, they will. But yeah, you are right. They share it a little bit. Anyway, and I wasn't saying it to correct you. Just generally, we all make these little mistakes. I'm sure I've made 3 already this day. There's some decent players in the outfield, and I took the outfield a little bit more seriously because when I look at the waiver wire, the one thing I say is, like, what do you do if you lost Ronald Acuna? And the truth is, you're not going to replace him. You're not. But you can get some of what you're going at, and I think that you should. The harder part is that. Well, I mean, they're both hard because you're looking at a guy that probably would have hit 35 plus home runs and stole 25 plus bases, and it's hard to get 30 home runs, and it's hard to get 20 stolen bases. But in shallow leagues, there's some decent players, and I think I can survive. In that league that I have Acuna, I have some other players that are hurt that I think are going to come back at some point pretty soon, like Buxton, like Eloy Jimenez. And the truth is, they don't come back. I don't have much chance anyway. So I swing for the fences, and I actually picked up Orlando Arcia because what he was doing what Arcia was doing in the minor leagues. The truth is, going into the 2020 season, Arcia had a really terrific spring training, and he was coming off a really good close of the year before. And I was doing the show at the time with Dan Gilbert, and he used to talk up about how he thought that guy might be taking a step forward. He didn't take it in 2020, but what we've learned about 2020 is you got to take it with a grain of salt. I'm not going to write off a player because of this. And now with Acuna hurt, he's going to play all the time. So I like Orlando Arcia. There are guys that are actually good, like Avisail Garcia, who's 50% unowned. He has 16 home runs, and he's batting .405 the last 14 ways. I think Andrew Vaughn has hit 3 home runs, stole a base, hit .323 since the start of June, the last 30 days. I think he's learning something. And that's what we see with a lot of these young guys where they actually do get better with practice, and he's 25% rostered. Jake Fraley is 60% rostered. He's not the world's greatest batting average guy. Probably hit around 250, but he's played 38 games and he's hit 7 home runs and has 7 stolen bases. That's part of the things that you could pick up. And Akil Badu, of course, he's kind of a stolen base guy. 16 stolen bases this year. He's 33% rostered in Yahoo leagues with a 358 on the year. OBP, including that really rough patch they went through in that second part. There's also Ben Gamble, 7% rostered. He's hitting 341 with 5 home runs in the last 14 games. The interesting thing about him is that this isn't like there's no reason to believe that Ben Gamble is a good player, but he's carried for 30 games of 961 OPS. So this is more than a passing thing. And, as I said before, sometimes you can carry somebody like this, play him until he's not hitting anymore, a.k.a. Jake Bowers, who won't be mentioned this week. Because maybe the next thing will open up with a Jarren Duran coming up or Joe Dell coming up or the return of an injured player like Eloy Jimenez or Mike Trout. And you won't, but you probably don't have Trout and Acuna on the same team. If you did, that's pretty tough luck. It's also pretty unlucky at the beginning of the season. Other guys that I've talked about before that are available, there's a good number of them. There's Josh Rojas, is 41% rostered. Hunter Renfroe, who's looked better this year than he has in a while, especially the last 30 days, 48% rostered. Brandon Belt, who's on the injured reserve, 19%. I still like him, but he has been hurt a lot, and there's something wrong with the entire Giants team. As much as I think they're going to win, it's like they don't really like to play anybody all the time, with the exception possibly of Brandon Crawford. Alex Kirilloff is 30% rostered. Ahmed Rosario is batting second, is still a base guy. A couple guys that haven't been doing as well but might come back is Dylan Moore, AJ Pollock. They're definitely getting the playing time. Moore is doing everything you want out of a player except hit for batting average. And then the other guy is that I talked about Andrew Santander. He's been playing pretty awfully, but he's definitely worth a watch. Last year, the first half of last year, he looked like one of the 10 best hitters in baseball. He got hurt for the last 3.5, 4 weeks, still wound up in the top 120 players total. That's in him there. Wait for him to come around. I saw somewhere where he was ranked in the top 100 on the past 7 days, and so it might be a thing there. And then Jarren Duran is a guy that actually did roster this week. He's 26%. He's the rookie. The big news there was that Jarren Duran and Matthew Liberatore were left off the Team USA roster, which means that at least the conversation was had that said, hey, we don't want you to go to Tokyo. We might need you before the end of the month. It doesn't mean he's going to come up, but that conversation actually did happen. And I don't know about you. It's like if I wasn't going to come up, wouldn't you want to play for the United States? So it's got to be pretty serious for both Liberatore and Durant. On the deeper side of things, Ben Gamble's owned in 0% NFBC leagues, 7% of Yahoo leagues, 0% NFC leagues. Phil Gosselin, 0%. As I said, he's played the last 9 games, hit pretty well. Kel Castro has been kind of an average only guy. He's hit 429 over the last 2 weeks. He's been hitting over 300. Cole Calhoun has returned. He's only on 46%. Brad Miller had a really good game. I don't think this is mostly driven by that one big game. He hasn't been able to put anything else to it, so he's just a deeper league guy only. And the guy that I like in San Francisco, I'm going to take a second to talk about San Francisco. San Francisco. So let me finish the Darren Ruff in San Francisco is a guy I like, first base outfielder, and I would recommend Gamble and Ruff principally in Cole Hallam in the deeper leagues. In the shallow leagues, you can't argue with what Garcia is doing. I like Bedu, I like Garcia, I like Nimmo. There's actually a lot of guys I like on that side. Let's get the list. I'm going to take a moment before I get to the position players. The story of a couple teams that are doing really well this year: the Giants, and we'll just do the Giants and the White Sox. Okay. The Giants and the White Sox are winning for exactly the same reason. And that is that when they get hurt, it's like it doesn't faze them. But the strength of the two teams is different, right? The crazy thing about the Giants is they have no standout players, but almost everybody on their team is a good player. If Brandon Crawford misses the week, they put Donovan Solano, who can hit a little bit. definitely for average in that spot. They, Tommy LaStella gets hurt. They got Wilmer Flores. Brandon Belt gets hurt. They got Darren Ruff, who's doing the job. Lamont Wade in their outfield when they lost the Yastrzemski, and I can't remember who the other guy was that they were looking at is the regular. Steven Duggar stepped up. Who's the other guy stepped? Just everybody seems to be playing at a certain level, no matter what they're doing. Jason Vossler, Joey Bart now at catcher with it. So the reason why the Giants are winning that division is because they play as if injuries don't matter. It's kind of bizarre that they do that. And it's a nice way of playing a game. They have no superstars, but a lot of good players. But the problem with that is that when they're healthy, as much as I want to say, run out and get Darren Ruff, run out and get Wilmer Flores, keep an eye on Tommy LaStella coming back from his injury. And even to my disgust, the fact that Brandon Belt's losing time to these players, it's like it makes it harder for you to roster these guys. Whenever you have an injury, you're going to go look at the Giants and go, wow, that guy looks pretty good. Steven Duggar, Frazier. Now, what's the other guy's name? Not Frazier, whatever his name is. You're going to say there's guys with some pretty good numbers, but then when you put on your roster, you're going to see that he only plays 3 days that week. But that's how they win. The White Sox have done it exactly differently. They've had incredibly bad luck with their injuries, and they've had some really good luck with some out of the nowhere call-ups, like the opening that Yermin Mercedes had was amazing. What they're getting this week out of Gavin Sheets and Jake Berger, I like Berger a little bit. Who doesn't like a good burger? Those kind of fill-ins. What they've done is the White Sox are the best pitching staff in baseball. And I don't mean that, I'm not making that figuratively. Yeah, storms are coming here too. If I blink out, that's the thing. It is 2:52. God, I want to be done by. Is that this past week, Lance Lynn became the 4th starting pitcher on the White Sox to have 100 strikeouts before the All-Star break. And that's something that no other team has done. And the White Sox haven't done that since, I think, the last time they were in the World Series. Or maybe the time before that. The one where they had Javier Vasquez and those guys. The reason the White Sox are ahead in that division is because it's not because their pitching staff is that great. So their pitching staff is very good. But it's the fact that their pitching staff, all 5 of those guys, Cease, Giolito, Lynn, Keuchel, and why am I forgetting the 4th guy? Cease, Giolito. Anyway, they've all not been injured. They're winning based on the fact that the injury bug has not hit their pitching staff, which is the strength of that team. They hit enough to win, and that's why they're winning there. So, those two teams, the White Sox and the Giants, are teams that it seems like injuries don't phase them. Whereas other teams, like Atlanta, is going to be devastated by Acuna losing. By losing Acuna, and that's how they stay in that spot. It's the pitching. It's the pitching, stupid. It's certainly not, it's not the players, it's not the coaching, it's the pitching. Who am I missing? Giolito, Lance Lynn, Cease, Dallas Keuchel, and Carlos Rodon. That's the 5 guys. Anyway, in the outfield that I just said my recommendations, I recommend. Did I say I recommend Bedu, Arcia, Vaughn, Gamble, and Ruff in the deeper leagues. Calhoun in the deeper leagues. At first base, we're doing good as far as getting done on time because these places don't have as much news, and we've already gone through the pitching. First base and third base, which we do together. The news this week at first base, Cleveland finally optioned Yu Chang, which means Bobby Bradley is their first baseman. Trading Rowdy Tellez for Toronto means that they're allowed now to rotate their DH, which kind of alleviates a little bit of that problem with Kevin Biggio. You're going to see Biggio and Gurriel play less than a full week of seasons. Mercado or Ben Gamble? I'd bet Ben Gamble just on the playing time. But the truth is, Ben Gamble's been hitting this good for quite a little while for, like I said, 30 days. And he was actually I can't remember. He was like the key cog, like in the CC Sabathia trade years ago with the Brewers. You know, what he's doing, somebody's got to hit, somebody's got to play there. And he's been hitting pretty well for the Pirates for 30 days. Is he going to cool off somewhere? Sure. That's, like I said, that kicks the can 3 weeks down the field. But I would take Gamble over Mercado because like I said, I don't even know if Mercado wins that spot, and I don't think that Eddie Rosario is done for the year. Roddy Tellez allows Toronto to use the DH as a rotating spot to give people breaks. Francisco Lamont Wade has been moved out of the first batting leadoff spot in favor of Darren Ruff the last 2 days, and Ruff has responded. On Seattle, Jake Bauers has extremely cooled off, even though it looks like Evan White's not coming back this year. And as far as cooling off, Jonathan Scope has cooled off dramatically. If I were the trading sort, I would try to trade Jonathan Scope this week. The numbers still look very good. He's a streaky player. As good as he'd been for the 3 weeks prior to this, he could have 3 weeks just as bad here. And right now, when the guy looks at the back of his card and sees the numbers he had, it's the best things you're going to see. At third base, Baltimore recently acquired ex-Royal Kelvin Gutierrez. Chicago White Sox recalled Jake Berger. San Francisco, Wilmer Flores has been batting second or third in the last 5 games. So he's not just starting, but he's starting and is considered a key part of his thing. And Donaldson is back to his enigmatic ways, missing time with hamstring problems and crushing when he bats. He is the if you're late in life Chipper Jones used to be like that. It's like every time he played, he was good, but he missed 30, 40 games a year. The second coming of Chipper Jones. So some of these names we already mentioned already. In deeper leagues, Andrew Vaughn we already mentioned. It looks like he's coming around. Ty France we've talked about all the time. Since coming off the IL in 524, he's hitting 293 with a 358 on base percentage, 6 home runs, and he only strikes out 15% of the time. Brandon Belt's on the IL. It's probably Kirilov at 30. The companion piece to Ben Gamel is John Nagowski, who's been hitting 625 in Pittsburgh. Who knows? I mean, Phil Bevins looked really good for a little bit. Then there's Wilmer Flores and Garrett Cooper, who I actually put them on this list late because my assumption was they weren't playing enough. But the truth is, both those guys have been playing among the most of the teams that they're on, which is kind of Wilmer Flores I kind of get, but I didn't really know how to do it with Cooper, but that's the way it is. It's because they're benching Am Duval. At third base, Jonathan Lars rostered in 33% of the games. He's still an 8 home run, 8 stolen base guy. Ty France, Dylan Moore, we've already talked about. As far as like a baseline guy that you should do at least this good, Sterling Castro, over the last 40 games, hitting 417. He's just kind of he's a guy that gives you numbers that aren't horrible. I think that as a fantasy baseball player, you should try very hard to draft players better than Sterling Castro, but he's good enough. Phil Gosselin, I mentioned earlier, if you look at his numbers, and he's playing all the time, he is available. He plays third base, I think third base, first base, and outfield. He compares favorably with Patrick Wisdom, who is owned in a lot of leagues. And Jake Berger, who's 4% owned for the White Sox, is of the Sheets and Berger thing. I like Berger the best. A couple years ago, when Berger came up, he was a first-round draft choice, and he was kind of like the darling of the fantasy minor league world. And then he got hurt, broke a leg or something, and kind of got forgotten. And these other guys on their team, like Eloy Jimenez and Nick Madrigal, and passed them up. Why do people think you should give your good players for nothing when you're near the bottom? Well, I'm going to stop for a second because we've only done this part, and I'll talk about this. It's like everybody here can scream at the top of the lungs that the Cubs, with being out of it, should trade Kimbrel. But, there's a 40% chance, 50% chance that they don't trade him because they can't get a deal done. A couple years ago with Washington, everyone said, you got to trade Bryce Harper. You got to trade Bryce Harper. they couldn't get a deal done because in order to get a trade done, you have to have the meeting minds between two people that look at players and see them differently. Some people send me over offers that my first impression is, what do you think I'm a moron? I never say that to them, but I just politely decline, not my cup of tea or something really short. But it's because they think those guys are good and I don't, and we don't know how things. And then what you have is a deadline. So what you wind up having is a game of chicken. That's where you're going. And so the idea is to once the trade deadline in your league passes and you're in last place, the guys on your team really have no value for you that they could have possessed for you, right? And at the same time, once trade deadline passes for those teams, they don't have the prayer of getting better at the same degree as they could by trading you. So they're going to offer you something less than you want, and you're going to offer them something more than they want to give. And you're going to keep doing this back and forth until either you get this a point or the deadline just expires. And that is completely normal in fantasy baseball and in real baseball. And, I do think that there is a swath of people out there who in trading will just throw out a crappy trade after crappy trade after crappy trade, which I call it the Michael Jackson method. Not for Michael Jackson, but for Eddie Murphy's portrayal of Michael Jackson when we talked about how you pick up women, and Eddie Murphy in Michael Jackson's voice would say, "I just walk up to them and say, 'Hey, you want to go have sex with me?'" And it's like, and now most people you say that to are going to say no, but if you say it to 110 people, somebody's probably going to say yes. And hey, you got it. And that's what these guys trade. They're going to put out this stupid line, and some idiot's going to take it once in a while. And when you get one of those trades, and those sucker trades, the trades that, like, my least favorite thing on any sports podcast is the grade the trade. I think there's a spot to talk about like how to evaluate the very top. Like, I'm thinking about rebuilding. I need to move Trout. What should I get? That's a discussion you can have. But when somebody gets a trade and they say it's a great trade, that means that they screwed somebody else over. And I don't know how that came to be. Most trades should be graded C's, C, maybe a C plus or a C minus. But otherwise, you're just doing the thing out there. I was offered Molly and Brendan Rodgers for Jansen. Yeah, we talked about that earlier today. In your situation, if you're out of it, just like with the Cubs, if you're out of it, a closer is just icing on the cake. And you don't have a cake to put the icing on because you're not in the playoffs. So I don't have a problem with you getting rid of your closer because it has next to no value. I like Brendan Rodgers long-term in a keeper league. Molly, he's all right. But, that's the way I like it. Could you get more for Jansen? Probably. But I like the long-term prospects of Brendan Rodgers, seeing what he's done this year, seeing his development, and seeing that he's going to be playing next year in a Coors Field devoid of Trevor Story. So in deeper leagues at first and third base, I'm not going to recommend him, but Miguel Cabrera over the last 14 games is hitting .356 with 2 home runs, 12 RBIs, and 12 runs. And it's just good to see Miguel Cabrera do well. That's better than Pujols. As I was saying about Phil Gosselin, in his last 9 games, he's hit .297 with 2 home runs. That ain't too bad for deeper leagues. J-Man Choi is hitting .345 with a .479 base percentage, which keeps him batting second in that lineup. Better if he batted first. Darren Ruff reappears here. Harold Castro reappears here for much the same reasons we talked before. Darren Ruff since he's filling in for he's hitting .348 with 3 home runs and a .43 on base percentage. On the third base side, we're going to talk about Gosselin's there. We did talk about Jake Berger. Jake Berger was in the minors, hitting .322 with 10 home runs at AAA. He was the 11th overall pick in 2017. That's a guy that could pop. You got Brad Miller and Kelvin Gutierrez. So that's what we're looking at on the thing. At first base, I'm gonna stick with Ty France. I like what I see out of Andrew Vaughn, and my number 3 guy would be it's between Alex Kirilloff and Wilmer Flores. Probably Alex Kirilloff, but there are some decent guys here in the Yahoo side on first base. At third base, there aren't that many there. The guys are Villar, France, and I would take Castro over Dylan Moore, except in Roto Leagues, I would take Moore over Castro because of the steals and homers. At first base in the deep leagues, the guy I like the most is Darren Ruff. Yep. Though J-Man Choi is okay. And third base, I'm telling you, take a flyer on Jake Berger. That's the amazing thing about the White Sox. When they lose somebody, they pull somebody in like him. And you're like, yeah, that guy could be pretty good. I promise you that 2-3 years ago, he was as hyped, if not more hyped, than Nick Madrigal ever was. And I mean, I'm not saying that makes him bad. He just got hurt and forgotten. Then we get to shortstop, second base. A lot of interesting things there. Probably the most interesting of all the positions. Washington selected the contract of Alcides Escobar, and they've been batting him leadoff. Atlanta recalled shortstop Orlando Arcia and playing him in the outfield. Philadelphia option Nick Matone. Robel Garcia, ex of the Cubs and ex of the Italian Baseball League, has been playing at short in place with Carlos Correa. Elvis Andrus of Oakland has moved into the 2-hole, though he's still not stealing. Springer's return has not moved Bichette from the 2 spot, nor has it moved Simeon from the 1 spot, which is something I said I'm a little nervous about. I think that Springer is probably going to move. Is going to stay in the 4 spot for them when he plays. Acuna's departure will probably move Dansby Swanson from the back lineup to the top of the lineup, possibly lead off. That's going to be a big boon for Dansby Swanson. Washington's been batting Alcides Escobar leadoff. He's hitting .314 in Washington with no steals. This is the fill-in for Kyle Schwarber because it moves Josh Harrison to the outfield, and Escobar takes that spot. Tampa Bay recalled Vidal Bruján. Boston recalled Michael Chavis. Washington signed Derek Dietrich to a minor league contract. And he's a guy that basically was playing decent baseball in 2019, but did not get signed as a free agent going into 2020 because there really wasn't a free agent period. He's somebody to watch. Pittsburgh signed D. Strange Gordon into a minor league contract. San Francisco's Tommy LaStella has gone to a rehab with Sacramento River Cats to clutter up that already cluttered spot, and that's one of the reasons why I kind of like players away from the Giants over players on the Giants. Springer's hasn't moved him. Nico Horners comes everyday second base, though he's batting 7th behind Jason Hayward. I'm hoping that he hits a few times and gets to the top of the lineup, but it hasn't happened yet. Philip Brijan and Wander Franco, as hyped as they are as prospects, got 2 of their first of the last 4 days off, which means that they're not so great that they're not going to get the Tampa Bay Ray treatment, which is you're not going to play all the time, and that's going to diminish your value at some level. Boston's Enrique Hernandez has been hitting and he's taken back over leading off in front of Devers, Bogaerts, and Martinez. Chris Owings coming back thing. I'm still big on Owings. His first game back, he went 0 for 5, and then he didn't get another start until the last 2 nights. He went 2 for 4 last night. He did start at 0 for 11 with a bunch of he was 0 for 5, then he had 6 pinch hit opportunities where he batted 1 time and didn't get a hit. So he started 0 for 11. He's still hitting 3-something for the year. I think that that Jonathan Daza's star is fading. He was empty average that doesn't hit for any kind of power. And that's going to be the eventual spot that Owings is going to play, though he started the past 2 games. Once at second and once at shortstop, filling in for Story on his day off. And if Story gets traded, that does open up things for him, too. And we got a month to whoever to think about that. So the question is, who do we like in this situation? think I have one guy in the wrong spot. So I've already said I like Nico Horner and Brendan Rodgers. They're definitely there. We've talked in the past about J.P. Crawford. And he's sort of having his breakout year playing for Seattle, batting leadoff, hitting 280 with 5 home runs, 3 stolen bases. We talked at length about our affiliate in the outfield. He's the guy in here that I like. Ahmed Rosario batting second for Cleveland is available in more leagues than he should be. I'm going to say Paul DeJong is owned in 25% of leagues. He's a bit of a conundrum to me. I always look at every time I see him play, I don't think he's very good, and then I look at the numbers at the end of the year and I go, that's not bad. That's not bad at all. Sometimes it's, one year was actually very good. Just don't see it in him, but he's available. The guys I'd recommend there are Ahmed Rosario because of the steals, Orlando Arcia because of the upside, and Horner, Rodgers, Crawford because of who they are. In reverse order: Rodgers first, Horner second, Crawford third. At second base in Yahoo, Keston Hiura is back there at 49. I don't have a lot of faith in Hiura, but like I said, with these young guys, they don't get it until they do, and so maybe he's starting to get it. He's worth a flyer, but as long as Ty Francil at 43, I'd rather have him and Brendan Rodgers and Nico Horner, and even Vidal Brujan, because even though he's not hitting that well as of yet, I think the stolen bases, he's such a good base stealer and he's historically a decent hitter that the stolen bases themselves will make him worth something. Where Keston Hiura looks like he's got to moderate his power in order to hit well enough to stay in the major leagues, I would take Brujan stolen bases. And then you have Starlin Castro in that grouping. Also, besides Starlin Castro, you have Harold Castro down in Solano. Both are pretty decent people. And, of course, Chris Owings in there. So I'm going to recommend Brendan Rodgers, Chris Owings, Nico Horner, Ty France. Actually, any one of those guys are worth picking up. They're just at different levels. Colton Wong is also on the injured reserve list, so you can stay healthy. He'd be in the group. He's only 20% owned. In the deeper leagues, at shortstop, Jose Iglesias is finally starting to do what I thought he was due. He's been hitting 400 the last 14 games with 2 home runs and a stolen base. Putting things together. Don't look behind. Orlando Arcia, 12% owned. Nico Goodrum has come back from the IL, is 39% owned in those leagues. He's a really good source of stolen bases, and that's something, even though he might only bat 230, 240. Those are the 3 guys there. A couple of average-only plays, Harold Castro, Ehire, Andriana. Don't love either of them, but they're decent. They're decent if you need somebody to stopgap. At shortstop, at second base, you have Harold Castro, Rubino Tour. Even though he's not playing all the time, he's got 9 home runs. He's actually batting 278 on the year. That's probably something you didn't think you'd hear. Nico Goodrum's in that group, Brujan and Owings. That's what it keeps repeating because he gets to play multiple positions. But that's the way it goes. I'm going to recommend Jose Iglesias, Orlando Arcia, Chris Owings. Yep, that's it. And that's shortstop and second base. All we have left is catcher. Catcher has an amazing amount of news, and where are we at here in timelines? We're at 118, just a little late. Well, I did take a second to talk about a couple other things. At catcher, Atlanta's looked the contract of Jonathan LaCroix. San Francisco recalled Joey Bart. San Francisco recalled Chadwick Tromp. We're bringing up because we like to say Chadwick Tromp, not because he's any good. Cleveland signed Wilson Ramos to a minor league contract. At the end of the year, he was somebody everyone's jumping all over again. So maybe he's the hitting half of the Cleveland catching tandem. San Diego sent Austin Nola to El Paso. Omar Narvaez, who we've been saying every week that we've done this is the guy you need to pick up, is now over % owned in leagues. But he's betting cleanup in Milwaukee, doing pretty well there. Arizona starting catcher is Dalton Varsho, but he's not hitting at all. And Texas, John Hicks, got to throw that mix in the Eric Haas world because he got 2 starts at DH. So he's not just Jonah Heim's alter ego. He's going to catch 2 games and probably play 2 other games, and he's hit pretty well. In true disclosure, that he's one of my 2 catchers in my TFGI leagues teams. I have Eric Haas and John Hicks. Woohoo! But like I said, my catching production is very good. In shell leagues, Nick Stassi is owned in 26 leagues, actually over 300, something you don't normally get for that. Playing it with the power he's got, he's a must-own. Mike Zunino for the home runs. Tyler Stevenson, 20% rostered in Yahoo. When he does bat, he bats in the meat of the order, and he hits pretty well. And Joey Bart did get called up, and he's 7% owned. Those are the three guys there. In the deeper leagues, Zach Collins of the White Sox, 7% owned. He's hitting 333 with 24 at bats with one home run. He also his note is that Yerman Mercedes is actually playing behind the plate for the Charlotte Knights, and that would be part of what they sent him down for. Sure, he was hitting a little bad, but maybe they want him to learn what he needs to learn to catch for the White Sox. So you might see him come back down the road a little bit. John Hicks, he's got 2 home runs, and he's got 4 home runs last 2 weeks, only 2% rostered in NFBC. And Joey Bart is 12% rostered. The other one is there is that once we come out of the All-Star break, Crowder's going to have a stint at home, and so Elias Diaz, who's owned 51% of leagues, is probably worth rostering. Dom Nunez might be too, and that is the extent of it. Mal or these says a head-to-head league, not a points league, right? I think that's. Are you talking about Mal or Steve Scalfini and Rogers for Jansen? I'd probably take Molly. I'd probably take Molly over Steve Scalfini. But is it 10 team, 12 team? I'm sitting there because I do a show unlike the other shows where I talk specifically about shallow leagues, 12 team and older. I also talk about the big leagues and try to walk between the two. And I don't know if either Molly or Scalfini is rosterable in a 12 team league. Yeah. Well, you're giving up a lot. Of the guys there, I like Brandon Rogers the best, right? The guy that has the most value is Kenley Jansen because of the saves. And the third best player in that grouping is Robbie Ray. And so it's like, yeah, that guy wants a lot. I would sit there and say, if you're going to give up Ray and that, let him stick with Molly or whatever, but ask for somebody else back. God, it's true. If he's competing, the reason why he's only going to give you Molly or Scalfini is because if he gave you a better pitcher in return, he wouldn't have them for his competition. So you have to, when you're choosing the future in these things, you have to choose players that are injured this year or are in their minor leagues if they have a minor leagues. Like if he had so far, he hasn't gotten much of anything out of if he had Luis Severino. Or if I'm trying to think of some other guys, there's got to be a pitcher who's I don't have off the top of my head a bunch of injured players, but if you could say I'll give you Ray, but I want this guy back because you're thinking of next year, but it's a guy that won't contribute to this year, but you're giving up a lot there. You're giving up the second and third best player, probably the first and third best player. Yeah, I wonder if he probably is in love with Austin Martin, but that's the kind of thing. Like, if he's competing, when you give the trade, you have to get guys that aren't going to make him worse. And when you talk to him, and you really should talk to him, you got to sit there and say, "Hey, flags fly forever. You got to make your run." And it's like you can do it without these guys. You can do it with these guys. Who cares if you have Austin Martin? What would you rather have, a championship this year and come in third place Austin Martin in 2024? You can see what's going on. I mean, Austin Martin would compare him to Andrew Vaughn. Andrew Vaughn's a good player, but like I said, he's not a miracle worker overnight. Yeah, he's asking for a lot. Hope your trading deadline's a little ways away. But that is the thing. You can't get a better pitcher than Molly or DeSclafini because anything better than that's going to hurt him pitching wise, and he's scared to do that. Anyway, So with that, I'm gonna go to the very ending. My primary recommendations, we've been talking for a while. David Price, Kwang Young Kim, Logan Gilbert, Tarek Skubal, Heath Hembry, Joachim Soria, Chad Green, Brandon Nimmo, Andrew Vaughn, Akil Badu, Ahmed Rosario, Orlando Garcia, Darren Roof, Ben Gamble, Ty France, Jonathan Villar, Nico Horner, Brendan Rogers, Chris Owings, Max Stassi, and John Hicks. The league leaders in batting average are Vlad Guerrero in the AL with 337, Nick Castellanos in the NL with 330. The league leaders in wins in the National League and the Major League tie between Kyle Hendricks and Julio Urias with 11, and an injured Aaron Savali in the American League with 10. The area leaders are Jake DeGrom and Lance Lynn. These stats matter. Don't let them tell you differently. I went to look up these stats on ESPN, and they actually list you quality starts ahead of wins. Who cares? Nobody outside of the fantasy world cares about quality starts. Well, I guess Major League Baseball agents care about them too, but that's it. Two groups of people. Who is leading the majors in quality starts? Anyone? 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 No one cares. Who led it last year? No one cares. Who's the all-time leader in quality starts? This is a great answer. I know this answer. We don't know. We don't know because it's a made-up stat that came around in the late 80s, and it's impossible to go back in history because of the way that people judged errors and recorded errors isn't exactly 100% accurate. So there's probably a good chance that Cy Young had some 400 quality starts, but we won't know that because they don't go back. So anyway, with that, I say goodnight. You got George on today at 6:30. You got Lenny and Andrea. They're going to do a Sunday morning show, which the reason I move my time is partially to make my life a little bit easier. Allows me to mow the lawn Sunday mornings, and secondly, to stay out of their way, let them do what they want to do. In case they wanted to start a little bit later, they can go a little bit later from that. I want to do my show sometime between noon on Saturday and 4 on Sunday, which is where we're at here, so that it can get to the podcast level before the runs of waiver wires on Saturday night, because I do know that I have a handful of people listen to it. Thank you to the chat room for coming out, and we're clocking in at about 190, which is fine. I'm going to end broadcast here. Oh, Lenny's show is on at. Oh, this is what I should say. I know Andrea is traveling tomorrow, and she and I talked briefly about the Monday Night Roundtable, and we didn't do a show last week. If she can't, I hope she can make it. But if not, I'll lead a roundtable-ish show that's going to run with the Home Run Derby, where we're going to watch the Home Run Derby, and we'll probably just talk about the general things that are going on, like big stories of the first half, big things are happening in the second half, rather than any real thing. But if you're sitting there watching the Home Run Derby by yourself, and whereas I can get my friends together for the All-Star game, I cannot get them together for the Home Run Derby. I'm going to be watching by myself. You can watch with me tomorrow night, possibly with the rest of the other folks. That'll be the Roundtable Monday night. And with that, I say good evening.